Yes, I'm really excited to have you here. And I'm wondering if we can't address a little bit of the bombshell news from yesterday. The bombshell news involving the Jeffrey Epstein controversy and crisis that has engulfed the White House. Nothing really cuts through the noise. I mean, here we've had, in my judgment, so many illegalities from the dismantling of government, the access to government databases given to Elon Musk and to people who are completely granted this access without security clearance, without any kind of background check. They run right into all of these computer databases, scrape them for personal information from Americans, et cetera, make all of these changes to government. All of these things, I think, fall into the illegal category. Then you have tariffs that also, I feel, were being the tariff powers being granted to the chief executive in America right now without regard to a real crisis that would give the chief executive legitimately that power to institute these tariffs, and the immigration policy, which is additionally full of illegalities, people being rounded up off the street. They're not given their due process. So all of these things are happening in the world of America right now, and they happen quite quickly. But the only thing that really has cut through and created a crisis for this president, who was part of all these things I just mentioned, is a sex scandal. Nothing cuts through like a sex scandal.
One that we already knew about. I mean, it's not even a new sex scandal, is it? I mean, this has been going on for years.
True.
I mean, they lived on the same street as each other. I mean, this is the other thing. It's like they were neighbors going around with a cup of sugar when they ran out. I mean, the first thing I want to say about the Jeffrey Epstein thing is that nobody is talking about the fact that Virginia Giuffre, who was one of the girls who was sex trafficked, took her own life back in April. We presume she took her own life. I think she took her own life. She'd moved to Australia. She tried to put it behind her. She became an activist, but it became too much for her. And I was actually reading what her family were writing about her yesterday because, you know, the excitement about, you know, is Trump a pedophile? Does he like the girls younger like Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, this letter that's, you know, been talked about this morning is certainly kind of alluding to that with all sorts of double entendres. But I just think about the girls and the victims of these crimes. That's where my head goes first. I'm not interested in salacious stories. I'm not interested in the kind of TMZ version of this, which I think so many people seem to be jumping on. I just think about the dozens and dozens of women who are having to live with the historic trauma associated with, you know, escaping Jeffrey Epstein, if indeed they escaped with their lives. And sadly, Virginia Giuffre, even at the age, I think she's 41, when she took her life, she just wasn't able to escape it in the end.
Well, the grooming of extraordinarily young boys and girls into this Jeffrey Epstein world is, I suspect, all over these Epstein files and investigative materials that clearly exist. And there are many, many victims. I mean, even by their own admission, Pam Bondi talks about north of 1,000 victims. So just on the victim level, you're right. It was more than a decade he did this.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine the numbers when it comes to victims. It's a pretty high number.
Meanwhile, Gilead Maxwell, who's currently in prison, is seemingly trying to kind of negotiate some kind of deal with the Justice Department, or, you know, buying us silence or goodness knows what, so she can kind of get some kind of early release when she, you know, she's on the far right of this picture, and I mean the far right in all essence of the words. I don't know if you know much about her. She is the daughter of Robert Maxwell, who was basically Britain's equivalent to not just Trump, but, you know, any of these big media moguls. Like
he's like a Murdochian kind of guy.
He was a Murdochian. He disappeared strangely off of his yacht in the middle of the ocean. Again, another one of these. Did he die, or was he pushed, or did he even just, maybe he's living in Monaco now? Who only knows? But these families, these dynasties, the they are all of the same, they're all cut from the same cloth. These are the people that Donald Trump wants to hang around with. If Robert Maxwell was still alive, he and Ghislaine and Trump and Melania and Jeffrey, they'd be sitting right now having dinner at this gilt-edged table, eating cheeseburgers from McDonald's, because at least you know where it's come from, and celebrating each other's successes. Meanwhile, Virginia Giuffre is committing suicide, and as you say, thousands of young women and boys from decades ago are having to live with what is left of their lives. It's just tragic. It's tragic that the media doesn't know how to cover it. It's tragic that people, the Democrats are like, oh, well, is this a way to get Trump out of office? Of course not. Trump's going to survive this like he survived everything. The way to get Trump out of office is to provide food banks for people because they're going to need them in 6 months' time when there's no food on the shelves. And, I was actually recording an episode of The Weekend Show just before I came on with you. And I was having the most wonderful conversation with my guest, but we were coming up with ideas about what Democrats could be doing right now. And I was suggesting food banks, branded Democratic food banks. You want to eat? Go and get, and everyone's welcome. You don't have to be a Democrat to take Democratic food from the food bank, but it's free and it's there for you because Trump has basically deported all the food pickers. I mean, we are going to find ourselves, there's always a lag. We're still in Joe Biden's economy, just about, tail end of it, right? 6 months. Inflation is starting to come up again. Things are going to get very difficult for people. And this Epstein story, for me, is just a distraction for the long-term problems of this regime upon the people of America.
There is no question but that's true, meaning if you look at the things that will ail and do ail America, the Epstein story and the breadth of the Epstein story, even as it engulfs all of these luminaries, it doesn't measure up, as we were saying. The tariffs, chaotic, ridiculous, inflationary, they're going to start to be felt. The ICE policies, now supercharged with all that money that was just approved by the big, beautiful bill thing, that will just create more of this wanton chaos in immigrant communities that are critical to the American economy. So I think you were so right. I mean, that's not to mention the defunding, as you've just sort of suggested, of all of these programs that were critical to those who needed a lift up. So in all of these ways, you're right. There are many bigger, more important stories that will weigh on America besides Epstein. It's interesting, though, that the only thing that really whips everybody's head around is the Epstein story because I'd suggest in part, for a chief executive who seems bulletproof from any other kind of political, taking on any other kind of political water, this one problem seems to be something that is more than just vexing for him. He's in a panic over it. He's trying to grab Pam Bondi. What can we do? Can we release some of these grand jury testimony papers? What can we? There's a panic we haven't really seen from Donald Trump in his first 7 months.
Well, he's got a lot of things to worry about. I came across on Instagram this morning a video of him talking about the lamps in the boardroom at the White House. And talking about, he spent more time talking about the tassel and how it needed a medallion instead of the chain going into the ceiling, and why you can't get paint that looks like real gold because, maybe someone did try and do it, and maybe they got very rich over it. I don't know, but maybe they did get rich. But if they didn't get rich, then they need to find a paint that is gold that actually looks like gold. So you have to use real gold like we have in the Oval Office to make it look gold. I swear to you, he was more engaged than I've ever seen him before. Because he was talking about painting and decorating. That's who this guy is. He is a realtor. He flips properties. That's what this guy does. He can't talk about anything. He knows nothing of trade. He knows nothing of international relations or diplomacy. He knows nothing of tariffs. He doesn't understand the way American culture operates because he's never been in it. He's lived in a bubble. We saw the real Trump in this clip. With his insane eyebrows and his comb over, when he's jeering and looking at women and pointing with a with his, best buddy of 15 years, Jeffrey Epstein, at which girl they were going to take upstairs next. The most perverted sequence, that video that you have there. And that's who Donald Trump is. He knows being a perv and being a painter and decorator. And we have him in control of the United States and consequently the rest of the world. My prediction is that within 3 to 5 years, there will be a war, and I'm not sure whose side Trump will be on. I know it will be NATO countries versus Russia, but I do not know which side America will be on.
Wow, that's a chilling prediction. I mean, it is worth noting that there's a wag the dog potential that's always out there. I even mentioned to Kim when all of this hit with Epstein, I wonder how long it will be before Trump, desperate to do something to distract, unable to concoct distractions sufficiently, may actually launch some military exercise.
But that's why he bombed Iran.
Right.
He bombed Iran because the media was not kind to him that week. And, I in last week's weekend show, I had Simon Rosenberg on, the Democratic strategist, and I was saying to him that Trump appears to apply more war paint to his face when things are going badly for him. It's no coincidence. He is more orange when that's how insecure he is. He's like, okay, I'm really going to be super, super tangoed today. And then 2 days later, the bombs dropped on Iran and kind of didn't quite complete the mission. This is who he is. He is impulsive. And it's that impulsive nature and the fact that we aren't able to second-guess him. I mean, look, the stock market now has basically given up second-guessing Donald Trump. They're basically ignoring anything that he says because he's only going to reverse it 2 days later. It's the same with the Europeans. Europeans have basically given up on Donald Trump as well. They're just like, okay, we're going to do our own thing. We're going to have our own weapons. We're going to do our own armies. We're going to work with Canada. And we're just ignoring the United States. That is why we have to be planning for 2 to 5 years ahead. Start stockpiling Campbell's condensed soup. Because, it's going to become very problematic. And I don't know if I said this to you or to somebody else, but America is not cut out for an authoritarian takeover of government. Here, everything is just fun. It's In-N-Out burger, and it's picking up donuts on in your lunch hour. Things that I don't have in my culture. Donuts? What are you talking about? And I love it. I love it. Donuts are part of the reason why I wanted to live in the US. The informality and the freedom and the joy of you're going to cook? Of course I'm not going to cook. I'm going to pick something up on the way home. I love that. But the United States is not cut out for the more serious aspect of an authoritarian takeover. We look back, Clinton and Monica Lewinsky was like the big scandal. Obviously, Nixon and Watergate was the big scandal. Those things are like a drop in the ocean compared to an authoritarian takeover of government. And when Trump cancels the Late Show, or CBS cancelled the Late Show, they're not just cancelling Stephen Colbert, they're cancelling popular culture. This is no surprise. It's in the pages of Project 2025. Read the document. This is all part of the plan. It's just going to become a homogenized, far-right Christian nationalist nation. Anybody of color is going to be deported. Anybody who is not American-born is going to be deported. It is game over. I mean, the story that hit me the most today, sorry for this little rant, but I'm feeling it, is that Trump is destroying $10 million worth of contraception rather than send it abroad to women in need. The State Department just announced this. It's costing U.S. taxpayers around $167,000 in total to even just destroy it.
This is part of the clawback?
Well,
the clawback of the $9 billion?
They'll say it's part of the clawback, but it's part of the Project 2025.
Sure.
It's part of this kind of far-right Christian nationalism. No contraception. Contraception will eventually be banned. They've already talked about doing it with the morning after pill and stuff. It's, gay marriage will be outlawed. I mean, we have to be serious about the things that are in the document. As Kamala Harris said, I can't believe they wrote this stuff down.
I love that you mentioned the Project 2025 so prominently in your little run, because it wasn't just Project 2025 that was pointed to. Those who served in the last Trump administration, to a person,
Yeah.
spoke about the authoritarian instincts, how
Yes.
that was the thing that they worried about the most. I mean, person after person, and the letters signed by so many people who worked with him.
Yes.
So now it's happening. It's right on schedule.
There's no one to stop him. And, the checks and balances, well, those two words need to be removed from the American language because they don't mean anything anymore. They're effectively gone. He controls all branches of government. 6 of the 9 Supreme Court justices are far-right Christian nationalists who are also, they are, even the black one, they are all pushing for the deportations. They're giving him the support. They're giving him the immunity. They've banned people kind of suing the government. I mean, if you're not taking this seriously, then you're not paying attention. You've got to stop shopping for donuts and focus on this, or start stockpiling donuts, I'm telling you, because this shit is going to get seriously real within the next 6 to 12 months.
You mentioned that you kind of come from the British European experience closer to the kind of deprivation that you had during wartime. And there's a shadow effect of that, right? I mean, in Britain, I think this is what you're saying. There's sort of a culture informed by that being deprived of many of the sort of luxuries of life that were deprived during the war. World War II still is something that hangs over Europe and the British experience. I think
Britain especially. Britain still operates like it's 1946. The war has just ended. They're celebrating the defeat of Hitler, but you still can't get eggs. You still can't get meat, and you're still having to mix milk with powder or create milk with powder. Not completely, but in some ways, that mentality is there. There are daily reminders of the fact that the authoritarian was defeated, and you don't take anything for granted. There's a phrase, make, do, and mend. Do you know that phrase, make, do, and mend?
I don't know that, no.
So rather than go out and buy, another pair of tights, you darn your tights. You sew them up. You make do and you mend, because there isn't money for luxuries like keeping your legs warm. And so I just feel like, yes, that is very much a part of Britain, but also Europe as well. And, that's why when J.D. Vance went to Europe and made that speech, and when Pete Hegseth went to Europe and made that speech talking about embracing fascist parties and how, you need to be more welcoming of the far right and America is not going to be here to defend you in future, they might have just been words to some Americans. But to the Brits and to the Europeans, it was devastating. It was basically condoning the rise of the far right and Hitler and the Third Reich and everything that went with that. And Europeans live in the shadow of war. There's never been a war to, you imagine a bomb dropping on the In-N-Out burger. And people would be like, where am I going to get my In-N-Out burger, my double-double? I just feel like we need to wake up in the US and recognize that it can happen here, contrary to the view that it can't happen here.
Yeah, this is what I've been saying for a long time, that Americans, and this is the problem, and as I saw Trump pick up momentum politically, this is prior to him winning the second presidency, I think Americans are fat and happy. We are so fat and happy that we complain about the Biden economy. I understand that the Biden economy left people out, but the idea somehow that the Biden economy was the thing that drove Trump to power, what, are you kidding? It was the best economy in the world.
Well, there is no Trump economy, because the first Trump economy was Obama's economy, and then COVID came.
Right.
So
well, he also had restraints on him. I feel like he wasn't surrounded by the loyalists he is now. He can just run amok.
There isn't a mechanism in that big, beautiful bill, or that fat, ugly bill, as I prefer to call it, that does anything for working people. It puts up their tax. So if you're earning less than $50,000 a year, your tax is going to go up significantly, up to 27% more. But if you are earning, $1 million plus, you're going to get a massive tax cut. And if you're into the billions, then you're laughing. I mean, these are the tax cuts that Trump wanted to do the first time around and was prevented from doing. Now it's been ratified. He's going to get everything that he wants. This is the saddest part of this story. And I don't want to be accused of being defeatist or negative, but I am a realist, Mark. And bringing some European realism to these airwaves by saying that you can't just keep running forever, because we don't have anything to fall back on in this country. I mean, the welfare state in the UK, the national health and the welfare state, i.e., the dole being paid to if you don't have a job, those things were born out of the Second World War, right? They created those things because the war devastated the nation. And so people needed to be paid. They didn't have any money, and they certainly couldn't afford health care. So that's why we have those things. And all these years later, they are still there. They're not perfect, but they are still there. So it's a social safety net. It's a soft place to land. But if war came to America, to the mainland, and don't think there won't be a draft. That's the other thing. There'll definitely be a draft. Trump will see that as a great opportunity to get. It's socialism, by the way, the draft. Just so you know, paying people, feeding people, clothing people. But Let's not mention that. This is what it will come to, and anybody under the age of 30 will be asked or invited or requested to come and fight the enemy. I don't know who the enemy is going to be right now. It could be Russia, but it could be Europe. Who knows? But this is what people are talking about who are planning ahead. This is what political scientists are looking at. This is what historians are talking about. And you have to listen to these people, because there is a lot of historical trauma that goes with this. And anybody who's a minority, whether you're a Jew or whether you're black, you feel it. You feel it in your balls. And people who are white and wealthy, they're not connected to this stuff. They don't have that empathy for the fact that we live in this kind of imperfect world. They're paying their way out of it. And Trump's one of those people. That's why he doesn't understand, can't feel anything. He's never had to struggle. And so many Congress people have never had regular jobs. They just don't know what regular people are going through. So, there isn't a social safety net to land on when things go wrong in this country. And it means that people will be destitute and homeless. And then, of course, they get tarred with the brush that, you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all of that stuff. I don't know where that comes from, but it's just, it's so offensive. So the future is quite bleak unless we all get engaged. This is all preventable, but everybody has to get engaged. And voting is the fundamental part of that. It's almost like the last thing we have left.
This from Andrew Gordon. Remember, folks, all this stuff makes us feel hopeless and feelings of perpetual dread. But we are stronger together, and we have to fight to the ends of the earth to ensure our children's futures. Fight on, he says, which is kind of what you were just saying toward the end of what you were talking about. I mean, that things are bleak. You found the right show, because I'm not a hopium guy. I'm not to blowing sunshine up everybody's butt. People call me a pessimist. No, I'm a realist. When things are grim, you got to call them grim.
I feel like, the culture here this is a wake-up call for culture, isn't it? And, the morning shows, they're all very positive, even when the news is negative. And I think that everybody needs to get on board. But now that we have Trump controlling the media because of this deal with Paramount and CBS and all that stuff, we're going to get less and less factual information from our media. So we won't be able to trust shows that even seem wishy-washy, like Good Morning America. Like, you forget all that stuff. You cannot wake up with a happy face every day, because it's not happy. It isn't happy. It's serious. It's really serious. And I just wish people would get serious. I mean, I would have been of the opinion that, that Stephen Colbert cancels the format of the show before they cancel the show and says, okay, there's an authoritarian takeover of government. We're not doing comedy every night. I'm going to invite on historians and serious people, and we're going to sit and we're going to talk about the threat of authoritarianism. Well, it's not even a threat now. It's our present. Can you imagine that, though? Breaking with convention.
Well, I don't mean. It's a hypothetical, but it's kind of a fun hypothetical. I would say that he does a lot of skewering of Trump and of the authoritarian instincts of Trump in
in a
a
comedic,
comic
right
way.
style.
I mean, in a way, it does serve that purpose you're talking about.
Yeah, but it
without
softens
being
the edges
heavy-handed.
of the dictatorship, Mark. This is the problem. It softens the edges.
Well,
Dictatorship is dangerous. And the moment you start being comedic about it, people are like, oh, it's fine, because, you know, there's jokes. But there's nothing funny about it. So cancel the show.
Fair enough. I mean, if you canceled the show yourself, though, I can argue that you're, like in the Timothy Snyder warning, you're pre-surrendering. You
get a bigger audience.
Make them cancel you.
I think you get a bigger audience. I honestly think if that show format went from him standing doing a monologue to seated at a table with somebody else, just talking about the serious stuff, I think more people would watch. I mean, these shows, even now, obviously, these shows don't get the kind of audiences they used to when Johnny Carson was doing them, obviously. Because we're so divided now and everyone's in their information silo. But this is something that connects everybody. The rise of fascism affects everybody, even Republicans who voted for Trump. They're also not going to be able to get food. They're also, we see it now.
They may be the first ones not to be able to get food.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So this is, for me, this is the seriousness of it. I've done it on 5 Minute News. I've basically changed the programming. And it has hit the ratings a little bit, but I'm convinced that telling the raw truth is more important than growing the network.
Sure. I mean, I think that it's a provocative notion. I sadly feel as though Americans are drawn to the things that entertain them. I mean, if it were really true that if you just sat down and talked about the rising fascism and authoritarian instincts that are being played out across the streets of America and in government, you'd have huge audiences for all of our YouTube shows. There are some that have huge audiences. I mean, you have a really great audience over on Midas Touch. We have a growing audience here. But I would say that there's still within America a sense that this couldn't happen here. Like there's a normalcy bias.
Yeah.
And
it's denial. And it's the fact that all we've really seen in the U.S. in our lifetimes is Pearl Harbor and 9/11. And that's it. But, these events kind of come and go. And I don't know if I said this to you before, but I never understood how the U.S. was able to make movies about buildings exploding after 9/11. I thought that would be the end of it because it became real. And so all these kind of disaster films, it's game over. We can't do that anymore. This is now our reality.
How in the U.S. can you do movies where everybody's got a gun and shooting each other when people on the streets of America are shooting each other with massacres and all the rest? I mean, you explain that disconnect to me. It's amazing.
Art imitates life and vice versa. So it's important that you and I, as independent journalists, speak in these kind of raw truths. It's not to scare people. It's not fear-mongering. It's just a reality. Trump he's so scattergun. He's so untrustworthy. He's so emotionally sensitive. And this week, he's finally realized, thanks to Melania, supposedly, that maybe Vladimir Putin is not such a nice guy after all. It's like murdering Alexei Navalny didn't seem to bother him, or getting rid of the director of transport last week in a kind of schmelting accident. I mean, the reality is that, the human rights atrocities of these dictators, Trump doesn't even bother with. He doesn't care about. But, Melania says that maybe he's been playing me for the last few months. And he's like, hang on a second, maybe... And that's the sad part of this, is that we all know that Trump's been played. It's so obvious. All the commentary is covering that. And Trump's like the last person to know.
Well, he's in the biggest echo chamber there is. And Fox News Channel, which is the exclusive information source for him, they are that echo chamber. Fox News Channel is on in every government building. Any place that there's a television, it has to be tuned to Fox News Channel. It's a remarkable thing.
And in all the military bases as well, which means that, unfortunately, we are breeding armies of far-right nationalists. Yeah,
the propaganda machine is everywhere. Franny says Anthony Davis is 100% correct. That is the top percentage, 100%. His 5-minute news videos are a must-see for everybody. We are all on the Titanic, people. Wow. Merry Christmas, Franny. But look, all kidding aside, these are dire circumstances, I think, that we find our nation in. And I can't believe how completely without any regulatory restraint this president has been allowed to act on his impulses. And the Project 2025 authors, Russell Vogt, who runs OMB now, critical, central, almost a nucleus of government funding in Washington, one of the primary authors of Project 2025 is able to, one chapter after another, institute these programs like the clawing back of the $9 billion.
Yeah.
The clawing back of the $9 billion, again, it had a tepid pushback from Murkowski and Collins. But apart from that, this $9 billion is nothing. I mean, it's pocket change. And
but it's not about the money, though, is it? It's about shutting down NPR and PBS.
It's cultural.
It's about getting rid of any pushback. And that is what authoritarianism is. It is silencing any dissenting voice. And, my fear is that it will eventually happen with YouTube as well.
Oh, my God, yes.
And so that we're going to have to put our shows behind a paywall where if you want to see it, you have, it can't be public. And I don't want to do that, but that's kind of where it's heading because free speech is over. And it's interesting that they ran on this kind of free speech mantra, but it's not free speech at all, is it? It's free speech when you agree with them. And the saddest part of this story is that, none of these policies are going to benefit any Republicans, working Republicans in the long run at all. It's like turkeys voting for Thanksgiving. And that, I don't know when that will dawn on them. It's like they're watching it on TV like it's a game show. And every night they watch it and they love it and they think it's great. Oh, yeah, this whole America experiment, this is a great game show. And then one day they turn and look out the window and boom, there's a huge mushroom cloud that comes towards them and they die. The mushroom cloud is not as far away as we thought. I mean, what is it, those scientists who do the doomsday clock or something?
Right.
It's never been as close to midnight as it is right now.
Well, you mentioned scientists, the denial associated with science, with getting rid of all science, government science, the greatest threat, apart from that which you've just described, which is sort of a huge war, conflict like that we're sleepwalking into the end of humanity. I mean, into our own extinction, and we're hastening it with the fossil fuel production, but just the pollutants alone, leave aside the climate change, just the tonnage of pollutants into the air, water, soil.
I know.
That's all being
and everyone
erased
drinks that water
from all government websites.
Right. But the wealthy drink Evian and bottled water. They don't drink water from the tap, which regular people can only afford to do. And so I believe, and it sounds like a conspiracy, but it isn't, that there is a plan to eradicate the poor. To just eradicate them, whether it be whether it be through COVID, as it was, where he just didn't seem to care, because he knows that statistically the poor are the people who die first, and this is their plan, and it's all in the pages of the project. So, it's not like we're making this up. It's dark. It's so dark, and there's the religious aspect to it, the Opus Dei stuff as well. I mean, it's complex. It does require a lot of reading and a lot of critical thought. But on the surface of it, I believe that there are more of us than there are of them. And I'm not talking about Republicans and Democrats. I'm talking about good people and bad people. It's as simple as that. You can pick whichever side you want, and everybody is welcome. But they are so bad and cruel and evil. And to snatch people off the streets and to deport them to countries that they've never known is pure cruelty. These people haven't even broken the law. Notice how they shifted that. Originally, it was like, we're going to take everybody who's a criminal off the streets. Right? That was originally the plan. All the immigrants who were criminals were going to go. Then that disappeared somehow. Like, criminal wasn't really the issue anymore. It was just anybody who crossed the border. And then we heard Tom Homan go, well, if they're in this country, undocumented, then that is illegal, so they broke the law. So suddenly they become criminalized without a court hearing. That is how fast things change, and that took 2 weeks.
And they are going to the courts where there is actually a legitimate asylum plea being played out and adjudicated,
Yeah.
and they're picking them up before they can actually make that asylum plea. It's a remarkable
They're even
thing.
doing it at naturalization ceremonies as well. You know, where people are getting their American citizenship, having filed all the paperwork and lived in the country legally and done it all the right way. People are about to swear allegiance to the United States of America. Whoop, handcuffs, back of a van, unmarked vehicle, off to somewhere else.
Yeah, off to Sudan or something. It's a remarkable thing, too, where they're transporting these people. I mean, it's pretty grotesque, you know.
But this is why
well-
people don't protest en masse, because there's no social safety net. This is when we look to Europe and we see these mass protests in France or in Britain. It's because there's a social safety net. If you don't go to work, you're not going to be on the streets. But here we don't have that. So people cannot protest in the numbers. And also the way criminal damage has been criminalized is so great here that if you smash a window, then you'll do prison for 10 years. Whereas in Europe, they'll just give you a small fine. This is the reason why America is not cut out for an authoritarian dictatorship, because there are systems in place to prevent an uprising of the people.
Well, we're out of time, but just on that last point, I think the presence of troops in Los Angeles and whatever the excuse was, and it was just an excuse, a concocted excuse to pull the trigger on those troops and that presence, that sets you up for what you're talking about, which is beating back any sort of legitimate protest on the part of the people. It's intimidating to go up against the U.S. Marines.
Yeah. Well, Trump gave them full authorization last week, didn't he? That's what he said, that these agents have full authorization to defend themselves in their ability to do their jobs. And that means arresting people who get in the way of a deportation. This is as close to the Nazi Germany as America has ever been, and ever, and this is it. I mean, it's not like we need to be like, watch out, there could be an authoritarian takeover. We are marinating in it right now.
Absolutely.
And so we have to be real about that.
The brown shirts, the SS, it's all there. The Stasi.
Yeah.
It is what we're seeing with these unmarked, masked people plucking people in whatever venue they find themselves. It could be a high school graduation or a Home Depot, and then you don't see them anymore. I mean, this is the disappearing of people the way Pinochet did in Chile.
Right.
We're out of time. I want to ask you to please remind people of all your great work on Midas Touch Network. I love 5 Minute News, but you do way more than that.
5 Minute News every day, new videos, explainer videos, talking about the way the world is. Wednesdays, Uncovered with Ron Filipkowski on the Midas Touch Network. Sundays, The Weekend Show, a kind of long-form interview with one of the greatest thinkers I can find of the time. And you can find me on Substack as well, The Anthony Davis, and I'm posting a lot more there as well. So plenty of places to connect and meet up and get in touch, and I just love to hear from people. It's so motivating to know that we are a community of like-minded people who love the US. Like, we love this country. I love the United States. I want it to prosper, and this is why we critique. It's not criticism, it's critique for the right reasons, and we can find common ground on many of these subjects.
Hear, hear. Good stuff. Anthony, thank you so much. Always giving us a little time, and I know it's hard to get. You're so committed to so many different things. It's great to have you stop through, and you continue to be my favorite Britisher. So, all the best, my friend. Let's talk soon.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.